Here. Okay. Next, we will have the invocation by Lauren Gregory from the Victory Assembly of God.
Our Heavenly Father, once again we come before you tonight and ask for wisdom and grace and mercy, Lord, as we try to handle the business of the people. Lord, just guide us and direct us, give us unity of heart and mind, and bless these proceedings in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have one presentation this evening, the Unmet Transit Needs Assessment presentation by Edith Robles of the Planning Technician with StanCog.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Edith Robles, and I am with the Stanislaus Council of Governments. The Stanislaus Council of Governments is a joint powers authority represented by 9 cities within the county of Stanislaus. We serve as a metropolitan planning organization and the regional transportation planning agency for Stanislaus County. Stanislaus Council of Governments and the Transportation Development Act. So StanCog is responsible for addressing regional transportation issues within the county. The fundings for this come from the 2 TDA sources, the LTF Local Transportation Funding and the State Transit Assistance Funding. Every year, Stanislaus Council of Governments is responsible for 2 things. First, defining what an unmet transit needs is and reasonable to meet. The last definition was defined by our Stanislaus Policy Board in 2014. Annually, our staff does public outreach within the region and public hearings. This year, we're doing 5 public outreach workshops and 1 public hearing. I would like to share the public outreach workshop dates today in order to gather and analyze the data to compile this analysis. We are currently starting the public outreach workshop phase. The public workshops that we are hosting this year started in the beginning of the month in Oakdale. Our next one will be tomorrow at the Patterson Senior Center, following at the Modesto Senior Center, at Ceres, actually here in this building, Community Center, Wednesday afternoon. Following would be January at the Empire Library, and our final public hearing will be January 8th at our StanCog Policy Board meeting. These workshops are important to us. It lets us communicate with the public and get to see the public and what their struggles and what their gaps are, or what they comments, concerns that they have in our public transit system. January 8th would be at the Empire Library, and January 16th would be our StanCog Policy Board meeting. I apologize. Since we cannot go to all of the jurisdictions, we do alternate places that we conduct outreach at. If we are not physically there conducting outreach, we do like to go and hand out flyers of other ways that the public can get in contact with us and submit feedback. We offer different ways for feedback, and that is through our StanCog website, which we have an Unmet Transit Needs comment form, and that is the form that they go online, fill out, submit. They don't have to print anything, email directly from our website. We also have a public survey that they can access from any web browser, and that is a 2-3 minute survey that they can express concerns or questions that they have for us. Aside from this, we have some of our member agencies who are sharing the surveys and spreading the word on ways to contact us. And with this, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
All right, does anyone on the council have any questions for Edith? Nope, I think we're
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to citizens to communications to council on matters not included on the agenda. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in City Council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the City Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Citizens are entitled to address the City Council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. This time I do have a few speaker cards, and I'll start with that. I think the first one is it Olga Castaneda?
Good evening, Mayor Vieira, council members. My name is Olga Castaneda. I'm with the Ceres Library, 2250 Magnolia Street, and I am here to remind each and every one of our residents that we exist to serve the community. We offer programs for teen, children, and adults. We every Thursday afternoon we have a program for children. On the first Wednesday of the month we offer a program for teens, and on the fourth Wednesday of the month we offer a book club for adults. And we are also open to starting new programs. We welcome feedback, and again, the programs are possible thanks to the generosity of our friends of the Ceres Library. And in addition to materials, physical materials, we also offer our online resources, and those are available, again, freely available. And the community is open to the public, and we offer materials thanks to the dedicated 1/8 of a cent sales tax. Thank you, and I welcome visitors. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker card I have is Burl Condit.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Last week, my nephew Chance was sworn in, and you didn't have a citizens comment section at that meeting, so I come tonight to let you ask a question. Basically, I noted in the swearing-in ceremony and the oath that you take that the words "so help me God" was not in it. When I joined the Marine Corps in 1964, it was there. When I joined the police department in 1971, it was there. When I got sworn into the Ceres School Board in 86 and 92 or somewhere along in there, it was there. And I haven't been sworn into anything else since then, I think. But my question to you is, why is it not there? And what reason? Is there a law? Is there a court case? Is there something that took "so help me God" out of our oaths that we take for offices?
Mr. Wells, you know, or is that something we can look into, see about adding back? I don't know.
City
if we
attorney
can.
has, I believe that is the oath that we have used for many years, but city attorney may have some additional information.
Mayor, I did speak with the city manager previous to the start of the meeting. The current language that's in the oath that the city uses is the same language that's in the oath that's in the California Constitution. So it's very likely that at some point it was amended, but the current language does exclude that particular phrase from it.
Okay. So is it something, I guess, if we didn't object to, we could add back, or what? I mean, what's your opinion of that?
We can look into that, but the
Okay.
language of the Constitution requires a specific verbiage for every office holder in the state of California, starting from legislators to judges to local officials. We can look into whether adding it might be a problem, but I know at a minimum.
Or at least why it might have
Right,
changed?
right.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can look into
I
that.
would like to add that.
Sure.
These little monitors here are really insufficient for the audience because you can't see anything on them that you can understand. This, the 100-year thing, you can. But when that lady was giving her report, none of that we could actually see.
Okay.
So I think you need to
Maybe update those?
We're
Yeah, get
hoping to include that in the budget for next year. We've been trying for
Bigger ones.
several years, but unfortunately you haven't had the resources.
We
to
can
do
go
that.
with a 95-incher or some big
Yeah.
TV.
That's the idea.
I just bought a couple for our church, 85 inches, and they were $2,999 a piece. So
Okay.
that's what you're looking at.
All right, well, yeah, I think Mr. Wells said we've got them in the
Very
budget.
much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council on a non-agenda item?
Dave Pratt of Series. You know, sometimes I go to the Modesto Council meetings, and they're looking at updating Paradise, and one stretch where the pedestrian's going to cross that they're going to put up pedestrian signals. Now, I know Toby doesn't like my idea about putting lights at Moore Road, but I would like to see the upgrade on the pedestrian walkway across there, because the traffic goes through pretty fast at times, and not everybody stops. And sometimes you don't pay attention to the lights in the street. So just have a thought on that, putting pedestrian signal lights instead of those little knobs in the streets that sometimes you don't see. And also, when are they going to start picking up the leaves? Are you waiting until all the leaves fall, and all the gutters are all plugged up? Right now, most of them in my neighborhood are all plugged up, and you're going to sooner or later have to come around and vacuum all those out.
Yeah, Mr. Wells, maybe or Jeremy, I don't know if you'll win its schedule.
Are you?
Yeah, my name is Shane Parson. I just wanted to comment on Olga. She's been to 4 dinners. Every other month I put on a father involvement dinner for the Center for Human Services at my ranch, and Olga's been there 3 times. And if you ever get the opportunity to attend one of her sessions, you will be extremely amazed. This is a wonderful lady, and it's kind of my first involvement with the library, but she does a great job, and I think she should be commended.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on a non-agenda item?
Gene Akeley Series. Recently, this last weekend, or during the last week, there's been some news on television and probably print too about the homeless encampment over on the other side of the river, right off of, I think that's, I don't know, Beard Park, yeah, where the old steam train used to be. And tonight there was another short piece on Channel 3 about the encampment. They're going to move it, they want to move it underneath the bridge. And tomorrow night, I guess, they're having some meeting in Modesto, and they're going to vote on this issue of moving what started out tonight, from what they said a few weeks ago, 30 tents or 30 people, and it's over 400 now. What I'd like to know, and evidently there's a little notation in a newspaper article that said it's going to involve Stanislaus County, Modesto, and Ceres. I don't know if you're going to put input in there on, are you going to share some kind of cost? And if so, how's that going to affect Ceres financially? Is it going to drain some resources for them to help us take care of part of their issue? And what's that going to do to the involvement of those people being closer and closer to the boundaries of Ceres, and how it's going to affect all of us? And I was surprised I haven't heard anything on this before, especially from Supervisor DeMartini. I thought he would bring that up. At least you at the City Council, and you could have shared some of that information with us. And I think the biggest thing I want to know is how it's going to affect us, you know, on all these issues financially, and the community, the people who live here. And if they started out at 30 and it's over 400 now, it's just going to grow because it's like they're having an invitation to come. So I think that city council or whoever's involved with Modesto or Stanislaus County ought to give us something, because tomorrow they're going to vote on something, but I don't know what the issue is.
Well, let me address a couple of those. First of all, to my knowledge, we're not giving any money, or not have been asked to give any money.
Well, the context of why Ceres is involved in the conversation is because the property that they're looking to relocate that facility to is on TRIP, so Tuolumne Regional River Park property, which is a joint powers association that the city of Ceres, city of Modesto, and Stanislaus County are involved in. So our name is in there because we're a member of that JPA. So the JPA board met today and approved the concept of moving from Beardbrook Park to, in essence, it's under the 9th Street Bridge is the location, consistent with the regional planning for the regional park. That location is considered temporary. It is relatively close, within several hundred yards from the existing Beardbrook Park location, and the concept that will be voted on tomorrow by Stanislaus County and the city of Modesto will be utilizing community funding to facilitate a temporary, in essence, camp spot managed and monitored by 24-hour full-time staffing paid for through community volunteers and donations to monitor and make sure that folks stay within their campsites using the same camp materials. You won't have random types of tents that are evidenced now in Beardbrook Park. So the concept that is being vetted through both those administrative bodies is where those costs and expenditures. The action taken by the JPA this afternoon specifically excluded any expenditures of funds from TRIP, which we are a partner in, to ensure that any costs associated with the ultimate cleaning up of that site to its condition today or better will be handled by the cities of Modesto, Stanislaus County, and their community volunteers.
But nothing from Ceres? Absolutely nothing? No funding?
Zero.
All right. Thank you.
Any other individuals like to speak to the council on a non-agenda item? Okay. With that, we will move on to appointments to boards and commissions. We have one, the reappointment of Lori Smith to the Ceres Planning Commission. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Lori Smith has expressed an interest to continue serving on our Planning Commission. She is currently the chair of the Planning Commission, and staff is fully supportive of that continued appointment. Her experience and demeanor has been outstanding, and we look forward to the council's action on this item.
Okay, just a couple of comments on that. I can support this wholeheartedly. I know that Lori has been, a stellar performer on the Planning Commission, and somebody that I think you identified is very knowledgeable and has helped through the vetting process. So I really think that she is a key asset to the Planning Commission, and I can support that. Are there any other comments from the council before I open it up to the public to take any input?
Well, I'd like to say that I had the pleasure of spending 4 years on the Planning Commission with Lori, and that was my first taste of city government and everything, and she was a tremendous help to me, and I think that I learned a lot from her, and she complimented a lot of things for the city. And with what she's doing in the direction she's always done, and she's always taken it as a duty to follow through and follow up on everything. And with being up there and listening to her, it has helped me out tremendously to be where I'm at today. So I can fully support the reappointment of Lori.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, at this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for direction. Do we need to take a vote on this, or just give direction?
A formal vote would be
A
advisable.
formal vote?
I'll make a motion to reappoint Lori Smith to the Ceres Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Aye.
Jarosset,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino,
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next we'll move to conflict of interest declaration. Is there anyone on the council that would like to declare a conflict of interest on any of the 10 consent calendar items or new business item? Okay, hearing none, we will move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or the public for special consideration. Otherwise, recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. This time, is there anyone on the council that would like to have the consent calendar item pulled for further discussion?
Item 10.
Anyone else?
Item 5.
Right. Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to have an item pulled other than item 5 or 10? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for direction on the other items.
Move to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Aye.
Durasett,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino,
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item number 5, general correspondence information only, redevelopment and economic development department monthly report. Councilmember Condit?
Yes, I just have a few questions for Mr. Hallam.
I'm Steve Hallam, Economic Development Manager. Can I help you?
Mr. Hallam, thank you for being here with us tonight. I just wanted a brief explanation on the process of recruiting businesses to Ceres. If you can just educate us and the general public on that.
That's probably not a 2-minute answer. I have to say economic development and business attraction specifically is more of an art than a science. And one of the things that we keep, in my whole career, I've kept battling is people have a vision of a particular industry or retailer they would like to have in their community. And in essence, the market and the demographic makeup of the community largely drives the type of retailer, for instance, speak, that you're going to attract. And so one of the tools we commonly use when we look at the idea of, hey, who could we attract in this particular spot? Once a year, we have a company that audits our sales tax receipts, and it prepares for us a report. It's called a Retail Sales Tax Capture and Gap Analysis, and it identifies the types of businesses or segments of a business type that is deficient in the community based on a normal expected per capita population of 50,000. How many businesses and what type of sales tax should that attract? And frankly, that is typically the best tool we have to look at, okay, what are the retailers that we can market that fills a gap we have in our retail sales mix.
Communication specifically. Do we email? Are we cold calling? Are we meeting in person with these businesses? Or how does that go about?
For the attraction standpoint, it's typically cold calling, or I call it cold emailing.
Okay.
And the best results, it's interesting, we maintain, or it's provided by Opportunity Stanislaus, but we maintain a document called a Retail Lease Track, and it is kind of like a cookbook of thousands of retail establishments, ranging from the 5,000 square foot mom and pop store to Super Walmart Corporation, and it gives you basic demographics. They want to see, that retailer wants to see a population of X within a 3-mile radius, 5-mile radius, 10-mile radius. They want to see an average family income of X dollars.
Yes.
And so we will try to match that to a retailer mix. I was going to say you raised a point that I wanted to follow up on. Oh, the cold email. Now again, it's rare. Again, my experience, when a retailer comes into your area or you identify a site, 9 times out of 10, that retailer has already decided they're going to go into that, they want to come into our market or they don't. And so very often it's local economic development people are kind of behind the scene, behind the times from a retailer already saying, hey, we want to get in the Ceres market. It's a hot market that would meet our sales mix. I'm going to say an example. The Raw store, when Staples went out, Ross was one of those that Mr. Westbrook and Mr. Wells and I, we were sitting around brainstorming ideas of retailers that could meet a niche. And apparel sales is one of those that we are so under marketed.
Yes.
And we only, receive like about 9% of the potential sales to apparel retailers in Ceres. And so looking at kind of anecdotally, Dee Dee's Discount was doing very well, relatively new retailer in Ceres. They did well on Hatch Road. And their parent company includes Ross Stores, Ross Dress for Less.
Okay.
So we made a conscious effort. Let's bring this to Ross's attention. So purely through a cold email and again, going through this retail lease track, I could find out who the real estate department contact was, their email address, and we literally cold emailed them with, hey, take a note of this retail space. It meets your criteria for size. We believe it meets demographics. It meets your income, and look at Dee Dee's Discount. Here's the sales.
Sure.
It's a good store, and surprisingly enough, we attracted them to check out the Staples spot, and they went in there. That is rare.
Sure. And the reason why I pulled this
Yeah.
item, the reason why I have these questions is there is a couple businesses coming available, or I guess are going out of business in the district I represent, Target and Factory to You, and I was just wondering, do we have any leads that are coming available to fill those storefronts?
We actually have done another cold email to a company called Five Below,
Okay.
and it's a step up from a Dollar General, but I read a industry article about them last month that said they wanted in 2019 want to open up 80 stores in California. They're moving into the West Coast. So far, they only have a footprint in the LA Basin area. But we again kind of did a Ross style letter to them, email, and surprisingly got back an email just last week that they thanking us for the contact and that they wanted to check out that site. That was the Factory to You site. Again, in the center, it made the mix.
On the Kmart site, I can speak to the Kmart site. So on the Kmart location, we've reached out, myself, Mr. Westbrook, have reached out to the owners. That property has recently changed hands. So it was previously owned by most folks, a doctor in the area. It changed hands about a year ago. We've been in contact with the owner via email, and then as soon as we heard that the store was closing, we reached back out to them. The owners are looking at what their options are. They've got some legal processes. They've got to follow up before they have clearance to move forward on the leasing of that building because of the lease with Sears as the corporate entity. And once that's cleared up, they've expressed the need to come meet with us and the desire to come meet with us. But we've also had some interest from other folks who are pursuing the potential purchase of that building. So as you look at those opportunities to market the site, we also need the cooperation and full commitment of the owners so that what their plans are to make sure that we're heading in the same direction. As a 88,000 square foot facility, the number of retailers that could occupy that full space is pretty limited when you look across the full spectrum with where retail is headed. So it's likely, depending on what the owner wants to do, that building may be in a different shape or form. And so we need their help to show us where they're headed so we can focus our efforts to the right direction. Sure. For example, if they wanted to break that building as a shell building up into 4 pieces, then you're looking at marketing 20,000 square foot facility. Sure. Very different than marketing and trying to attract an 88,000 square foot facility. Yeah. So that's where we try to partner with the owners wherever we can to see what are their needs, what are their desires long term, so that we focus our efforts in a conjunctive use.
Sure. And if you can keep me updated on the progress on that along with the city manager, I'd appreciate it.
You bet.
And just a recommendation, we do have a Winco distribution center in our city. I think a Winco could possibly be a good site for that Kmart location. Yeah. So if we can, I don't know if we've reached out to them or not, but I think that would be an okay suggestion.
Yeah, we have some fun with that sometimes, and I don't want to say that we just limit to where our current demographics show those retail matches.
Good.
We recently, there are some restaurant pad sites in the Ceres Gateway, Super Walmart, Mitchell Ranch Center. Sure. And we recently kind of said, hey, let's reach out. We know that Cracker Barrel is beginning to make a presence in California, and put together a package and sent it out, and then looked at some of their demographics, and I think they got a chuckle out of our email. But they responded, and you never know it's like fishing. You just
Yeah.
keep casting out
We have
there.
to stay resilient and
That's
keep
right.
trying. So
Thank
I
you.
look forward to working with you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Before we move on, are there any other questions on this item? Okay, I'll look for direction on this item. So typically what we do, I guess, would be ask for approval of this item, but it was an informational item, so do we need to do that for this one?
Yes, because it normally would have just been
Okay.
adopted as part of the consent calendar.
So I'll look for a motion.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Aye.
Taurasi,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino,
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item number 10, resolution number 2018-136, ratifying the memorandum of understanding between the City of Ceres and the Ceres Professional Firefighters Association, Local 3636. Vice Mayor Rhino.
I have just one clarification question. I didn't see any mention of retroactivity, so I wanted to verify that there is not any retroactivity.
Good afternoon, good evening. No, there is no retroactivity. If you notice in the track changes version of the MOU in section, I believe 7.1, we had a deadline to for the ratification to provide the retro, and we passed that deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Only question?
That was it.
Okay. Are there any questions in the audience on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
Move to adopt resolution number 2018-136.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Aye.
Taurasi,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino,
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We have no unfinished business. We have no public hearing. We have one new business item, resolution number 2018-137, declaring a shelter crisis pursuant to Chapter 48 statutes of the 2018 and Government Code Section 8698.2. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor Vieira. As we've already hit on this evening with Mr. Yakeley's comments, homelessness is a topic that is trending and in much debate within the state of California and across the nation, but California seems to be the epicenter for the homeless crisis that most people are categorizing this as. So for most of this council, you recognize that the Stanislaus County has been embarking over the last couple of years on the focus on prevention, trying to get to root causes of how homelessness is caused and what the ultimate, I'll put air quotes, solution for homelessness, because it is a challenge that is very difficult to solve. What we're seeing is across the spectrum, from the state legislature as well as the local governments, are trying to find ways and funding sources to help tackle this challenge. And so the state has recently adopted a program called HEAP, so Homeless Emergency Aid Program, that is going to allocate $500 million in community block grants to communities across California. What that means for Stanislaus County is about $7.2 million in the next calendar year. In order to access those funds, the Continuum of Care, which is a loosely organized group that's got a bunch of membership, about 25 different directors across various sectors from government and nonprofits and service providers, would then have to make the application for those $7.2 million and then ultimately decide where those dollars get distributed through the 4 programs that are mentioned in the staff report. So that's services, rental assistance and subsidies, capital improvements, and youth services. The challenge here is, in order for a community to have access to those funds, a shelter declaration, a shelter crisis declaration has to be made. So what does that mean? That basically is a declaration by each jurisdiction. In this case, all 9 cities are being asked to make the same declaration, as well as the county, to be able to enable access to those funds. There's a tremendous amount of need for those funds, and there's a lot of different ideas that are being floated, and it's a challenge, I think, for most elected officials in the county of making decision to say, yes, we'd like access to those funds, but we're not quite sure what we're going to spend it on yet. That's a difficult process, and it's overall a challenge. So the request this evening is, the ability to make a declaration of crisis so that we can pursue those funds. Obviously, there's a lot of questions. I know, talked to all the council this evening and members of the community, and you see from the news and the media coverage of this, there's still a lot of questions out there that we don't have a whole lot of answers for, but really it comes down to our ability to access those funds, and whether that is something that we want to pursue. Most of the funding comes to Stanislaus County on the basis of the point-in-time counts, so that is a one-time count of the homeless. It's usually conducted in January. The last point-in-time count was 2017. At that point in time, our number was 35. I think most people recognize our homeless count in the city of Ceres is probably much larger than that. But for all funding purposes, that point-in-time count for 2017 is the number that matters. There is another count scheduled for January of 2019, and our employees as well as volunteers in the area are working to making sure that that count is as accurate as possible, because the more accurate that count is, the more likely we are to have a better share of the overall funding that's made available to help tackle this challenge. So the ask this evening is to approve the resolution. There was a slight change. As I put that resolution together, I had omitted inadvertently one key phrase with the point-in-time count, so that's there on the dais. It shows that 35 persons from our point in time, so that is updated for your consideration, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Wells before I open it up for the public for comment?
Well, I have a couple questions. You know, with this coming out with being a countywide thing, and I believe the county will have an oversight board to run it, and they would get administrative, be able to take an administrative cost off the top of that?
So the grant is organized, the categories, the COC, the Continuum of Care, is proposed under the county structure to change its organizational structure to be a little more in line with the way our local governments work. So the concept that is proposed in the staff report that the county is proposing and all the service agencies have joined on would be a elected official from the city of Modesto, Turlock, Ceres, a west side city, an east side city, the United Way, 2 other service providers, and that would be the organization, the structure put in place that would have the ultimate decision for where the funding is allocated. The administrative component of this HEAP funding is then able to be proportioned out to each of the entities that are receiving those funds. So it doesn't go to the county specifically, it would go as the administrative overlay to each jurisdiction who's getting funding from the program.
Is there any indication of how the portions of the funds are going to be expenditures and what the portion of the funds would ultimately hit Ceres? I see there's like 4 different programs, so would each program have a different
Yeah, the allocation, as there was a COC meeting last week that I attended, and the rough concept of breakout of those funding is shown on the attachment there of the briefing. The flex funding would be about $1 million, Youth Navigation Center approximately $1 million, and the Access Center and Shelter is about $5 million. So that leaves a little bit of float between those particular areas. The 2 primary data points there, the Access Center and shelters, those are in essence capital improvements, i.e. building some type of shelter or housing related to the homeless activity. That's where the lion's share of the funding is intended to go. But ultimately, the COC would have those decisions, and under that structure, we would have participation in that governance structure, helping making those decisions where those funds should go. So
would it be safe to say that there's a possibility if the city of Ceres and this body votes to participate in this program and say that, you know, the point and count total is 105, that the oversight board says that, well, the city of Ceres needs a homeless, a crisis center, that there's a possibility that homeless from other jurisdictions could be coming into Ceres to fill that facility?
Well, with the timing of this funding, meaning the point-in-time count is based on 2017, so the number is 35. So this funding is directly tied to that point-in-time count of 2017. The new point-in-time count would be future funding, not this funding. So our allocation is fixed in terms of what our point-in-time count is. The needs that have been identified across the system, far exceed the $7.2 million. With the way the conversations are going with all of the entities, without support of the entity that is, being proposed, there's very little likelihood that the county or someone would propose using these funds in a location that's not supportive, because the need to spend them is greater than an uphill battle if there's not support already. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but my question was, if this body decides to pass this resolution and support it, isn't there a possibility that they can require or put a homeless shelter into the city of Ceres and bring the homeless from other jurisdictions, whether it's Modesto or Turlock, to fill that shelter?
Anything's possible, but for them to do that, they would have to be able to do it on county land that already had zoning for that specific use, and that's a pretty limited and narrow focus. There's not many locations where that criteria would be met within the city of Ceres.
Okay. Alls I can tell you is the state's involved. They can tell you to do anything. So, any other questions of staff before we open this up to the public?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So does this vote tonight, does this declare a specific site?
No specific location. The declaration is simply that there's a shelter crisis, and it allows us to use HEAP funds in the city of Ceres.
Okay. Is there a temporary site that's being considered by the county?
There's a number of, so on the spectrum of the homeless, there's a number of different considerations. So kind of on the lowest end of the spectrum would be a low barrier shelter. And so the idea of a low barrier shelter is someplace where the homeless can go that doesn't have restrictions of the 3 Ps, pets, possessions, and partners. So that location is in essence, with a reference I talked about earlier of the 9th Street Bridge location, that's in essence a temporary low barrier shelter. It is not proposed to use HEAP funds for that temporary location. There has been a number of conversations over the past year of different locations for the low barrier shelter, none of which have been proposed in Ceres yet. But as you move along that spectrum from low barrier shelter to additional shelter beds to transitional housing to permanent and supportive housing, that full spectrum is likely to be considered as part of these funds.
If the HEAP funds are approved tonight, will the city of Ceres have any say in the site location?
Well, the location depends on what's being asked and what's being proposed. At this point, the city does not have a project that we would put forward. We don't have a proposed shelter, and we don't have any proposed project. Under the governance structure that is proposed, we would have an elected official on the COC with an alternate that would be the city manager, so we would have a voice in that overall conversation.
Okay. And what would happen if the council decides to vote no tonight? Would we still be able to receive funds? Would there...
Yeah, we would not.
There would not be any services that would be allowed to receive any sort of funds for?
Yeah, so if we do not accept the resolution, then we are precluded from using the HEAP funds for all but one category.
Okay.
So capital, we would not be able to use capital expenditures here in town. We would not be able to use rental assistance or use services. We would have access to the other service category, which is for the most part considered flexible funding, where you can put nonprofit programs in place to help people from becoming homeless.
Okay, so a preventative measure.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we would have access to those funds as the legislation exists. However, I have to caution that some of the representatives from the COC and the county are concerned about that kind of opt-out provision, and there may be the potential of an administrative policy that eliminates the city's ability, if they don't declare a shelter declaration, of being able to use those funds.
Okay. And would there be any possibility of receiving funds in the future if we vote no tonight?
Not of this particular
Not of this
source.
particular, but will there
This
potentially be money in the future?
Yeah, my read of where things are going at the state level and the number of legislative items that are currently being proposed related to housing and homeless, those things, I would expect that there will be additional funding coming down, but that's a crystal ball that I have little confidence in. But this is one funding source of $7.2 million. It is kind of earmarked on a kind of an annual basis. I would expect there will be additional funding in the future as well.
Toby, we obviously don't have any programs in place right now, correct?
Correct.
And the number of homeless in Modesto and Turlock and even Patterson, which has several programs, is a large number.
Yeah, Turlock's number I know is 250. The last number I saw from the city of Modesto is around 1,200. City of Patterson has a smaller number, but they've got a pretty focused program out there. Most people are familiar with the Host House, which is tremendously successful. So they have found some success in how they're running their program. So I would say in the county right now, Patterson is probably the best example of being able to take a program and getting it to work very well. But the numbers, we're obviously a pretty small number in comparison to that larger need that's in Modesto and Stanislaus County.
Part of my fear is what Councilmember Klein stated in regards to, if we jump on board with this, then, and again, not that the county couldn't do it or anybody else state couldn't do it, Mayor, is them come in, and obviously if you read the Modesto Bee a number of months ago, they talked about a possible shelter, on the other side of the freeway, I believe. And, if we say no to this, that doesn't mean that we're against the homeless, just so we understand. I mean, I think there's a huge need for Modesto. I think there's a huge need for Turlock to maybe use this money. And at the very end of the day, we're looking at a count of about 35, 27.
35 is our current number, right, obviously.
Whatever that number is, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to have a hard time supporting this. But
Vice Mayor Rhino?
If we were to make such a declaration, couldn't it open the door for the state mandates leading to Sacramento dictating how Ceres addresses the homeless issue? Because we all know
that is the $1 million legal question. So every city attorney that I know up and down the state is analyzing this very question. And so I'll turn to Nubia to see if she's got any late breaking news on that, because I know everybody was really struggling with that question.
The only thing I would add to that is that there's a very high likelihood that if the city does or doesn't act, the legislature will probably still pass legislation that might have what is commonly known as the unfunded mandate, which is requiring local agencies to take certain actions. So I don't think there's any guarantee either way. And it is become a very hot topic in Sacramento, and as Toby said, hard to gauge where it's actually going to go.
Well, I know that with the exception of our newest council member, that everyone that has sat up here has expressed concern about losing local control because of the state. And I would be real concerned that there's some pretty straightforward comments that would make it difficult for the city if we did pass it and declare we had a shelter crisis, and then at some point we decide we want to undo that declaration, then what guarantee would there be that the state couldn't come in and say, well, you can't undo that until you've done A, B, C, and D? I mean, that would be a concern of mine, as well as there's no guarantee how much of this HEAP money that the city would receive. And if we're going to go off of the 35 homeless we have, I would bet the county consortium wouldn't be giving us a whole heck of a lot of money.
I think your concerns are very valid. I mean, we're already seeing that with well, I wouldn't call it a request anymore. It's a demand that we provide water to regions outside our city limit. And if we don't build the line by a certain time, we're going to be held accountable for it, and we're not building it anyway. So to say that the state won't come in, and Big Brother always seems to know what's best for us. So I'm with you. You're not going to get a kind word from me on the state because they always seem to know what's best, and they're always the worst. So at this time, I want to open it up to the public. I do have one speaker card. Looks like Dwayne Thompson.
Good evening, Council. First, I didn't get a chance to, but I'd like to congratulate Councilwoman Rhino on your election. So
thank you.
Good job. I have a brother-in-law who's homeless. He's been homeless 3 times that I know of in his life, and he's like 30 years old. I have, a lot of feelings for the homeless, sympathy and things like that. But I also know that, some of them are homeless because either rent went way high or their place they were working for went out of business. But I also know, like in his case, it's a choice. He chooses not to be a productive member of society. He chooses to smoke pot and get to work late. And, you know, what everybody does on their own time is their own business. But if it's affecting your job and you get fired for it, and then you leech off of your roommates until they kick you out, that's a problem. And then when you have that life cycle where you do it more than once, you know, that's a problem. And so, you know, I feel for the homeless, but I also am not blind to the full situation. If I had a city and I offered free housing and free food and electricity and free college, I don't think it's a stretch to say that people would move in. Once they fill that, if I developed another area and created more housing, I don't think it would be very long before that got filled, and so on and so on. The city created the Beardbrook Park area to get all the homeless in one area, which I'm fine with that. But sure enough, more people came in, took over Beardbrook Park, and now they need another area. So you go and create another area, such as the one Modesto's B was talking about they're proposing on 9th Street. How long until that area gets flooded? And now we got to come up with something new. So where does it end? You got to be very careful creating a specific spot if you're willing to continue to create more spots. Now, I understand that this is supposedly temporary, but without a deadline on it, there's no such thing as temporary. Temporary is permanent until such time that you change it. So it might be classified as temporary, but it could be here 50 years until such time that it gets changed. The city, the area, has a homeless problem right now. We all know that. But if this happens, there's going to be a homeless crisis, and there's a big difference. There's going to be a demand on the fire, the police, the medical services. I seen an article where on medical services, they're saying that it's 42% higher in that area for homeless than it is for non-homeless. So that's a 42% jump in medical services. With regard to specifically the 9th Street area, you know, they're wanting to move them out of Beard because it's a flood zone. Well, they're wanting to talk about moving them into a flood zone. That area does flood. It is a flood zone. It's on the map as a flood zone. That area is also full of grass, which is a high fire hazard. You're having a bunch of people lumped together. You have a fire. You're looking at a hazard situation with people's lives, with kids and things like that. They're not going to necessarily be able to get out of there, especially in the middle of the night when they're sleeping in their tent. So you have a huge issue with that. You know, property value obviously is a concern anywhere it goes. Now, with specific regard to 9th Street, you know, yeah, that area is not the greatest, but Bystrom's, that area over there has a few issues as it is. You wait until that area gets inundated with homeless, it's going to get worse. And we all know, it's statistics, that there is drug problems with homeless. So that's going to increase. With regard to the donations and helping take care of this, the thing with donations are all fine and dandy, but what happens when the services needed are more than what the donations are that's coming in? Donations are not a guaranteed grant that comes in. It's based on each year, whatever you get's what you get. And if you don't get enough, you got a problem. One area that I was reading at had security set up for that homeless encampment, and things got so bad that the security couldn't handle it. They needed more security, and there was no funding for more security, so the local police department had to take in and take care of that. Well, Ceres doesn't have a lot of cops on the street as it is, in my opinion, and so now we're going to divert officers into that area. I have an issue with that. Human waste. You know, when you group that many people together in one area, that is a phenomenal amount of human waste. And it's right at the river, which is going to put all that in the river. In June, Sacramento removed 575 tons of waste from the American River. 575 tons of waste from the American River.
Can I have you kind of wrap up? I
Yeah.
think the red light came on.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
No
looking at
problem.
it. And specifically, as actually my last issue, specifically with the 9th Street, what worse place to put it? That is an eyesore like you wouldn't believe. It's perfectly open. You can see forever. There's no trees or nothing to hide it. I mean, you think it's an embarrassment for people to come into certain cities now, wait till people start driving through that area. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave Pratt of Series. The way I see right now, he hasn't been down to Beer Brook Park. I don't know if any of you have, but I have. They're only using less than a quarter of Beer Brook Park for the homeless, and they're camped out on a hill. And everybody knows what hills aren't very good with water. And this is only a temporary fix for moving down there and hopefully it'll for the time being. But if we get a whole bunch of rains, they're going to have to move them out anyways because of the floodplain. But yeah, Beer Brook Park, they're only using a quarter of it, and at least hopefully they can get that cleaned back up and let the public use it for its purpose. The pit count is not accurate. I don't care what they say. You can't get everybody out of the woodworks. And the problem is, it's becoming everybody's responsibility. It's the cities, the counties, and the state is going to have to do something. It's getting too far out of hand. There's whole families are being put out homeless, so more jobs they're losing jobs, and when they say there's jobs out there, you got to talk about living wages. You can't talk about McDonald's or some low-paying job where they're only making $15 an hour, and the way the utility bills and stuff goes up, they can't afford it. Maybe what we need to do is look at if you ever seen the movie Escape from L.A., maybe what we ought to do is take all the homeless and ship them down to L.A. and put up a fence around them, and then maybe make a bunch of people happy. But I know if I go to the Modesto Council meetings, and the last several ones, they've been talking about the homeless, and every time a bunch of people get up there, they say, we don't want them in our neighborhood. They're still looking for a place, and it's not a permanent. And as far as the weeds, I know I ride my bike down there once in a great while, and they keep that fairly well dished up. So I don't see a whole lot of weeds, and they're really, and if you ought to go check out the new park they got there that they've expanded down there. The last time I rode down there was a bunch of horse trailers underneath the 9th Street Bridge, and they're doing the first time in our area doing all kinds of, they had to do all kinds of stuff like rescue a person, be able to load them on a horse and take them to and get points for it. So it'll be interesting. It's really taken shape up there finally after all the years of what had been between the series and Modesto talking about expanding that parkway. But so homeless is just out of sight, and it's everybody's responsibility now, whether they like it or not. Thank you.
John Warren, Series. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. And getting back to the resolution. Okay. The resolution says we're declaring a shelter crisis here in the city of Ceres. What is the great criteria to declare such a crisis?
The state's indicated the inability to house those folks experiencing homelessness.
So we have no shelters here.
Correct.
We have no way to house any homeless people.
That is correct.
Once we declare a crisis, do we have to apply for that money? Because that's what this is about. You have to declare a crisis prior to making application for those funds. Am I not correct?
That's correct.
Is the city contemplating applying for those funds? You can declare a crisis because we have no spots for them. But are we
The
going
city
to
can't
apply for the
apply.
money?
The county, through the COC, is the only applicant that are being accepted here.
So the city of Modesto cannot apply for the money?
Only through the COC, so not directly to the HEAP allocation.
So Ceres could do the same thing, correct?
Through the HEAP, correct. But we can't do that unless we make this
Do we
resolution.
want to?
That's why we're here this evening. You're asking the
I mean,
question of the
We
evening.
can declare a crisis, but we don't have to apply for the money. Am I not correct?
That's why we're here.
Okay. The other thing I want to point out is that 9th Street Bridge has 2 ends on it, and you don't think those people ain't going to walk across it? In about 10 seconds, you're going to have them on our side of the river. And what are you going to do when they get over here? Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the council on this item?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I just can't keep my mouth shut. So, we have definitely got a crisis. We don't have a crisis in Ceres, but to give you an example, last night, a guy slept in the front door of our church. When I got there this morning, he was laying in the right by the front door, hidden by a block wall. I woke him up and sent him on his way. That happens quite often, and we have them sleeping between our 2 buildings. And we go down there, and they leave a mess, of course, and all kinds of messes that we have to clean up behind them. But this is a problem that's way beyond Ceres. You know what it is. We all know what it is. But at some point in time, when is somebody going to say enough is enough? When is the word responsibility, self-responsibility, going to get put into its place? These people are responsible for themselves. Many of them have problems. Many of them need mental health care. And I'm sure some of this money would go to mental health. I hope it would go to mental health programs to address some of these people that need help. Some of them need to finish their education so they can get a better job. Some of them need job training. Maybe some of the money will go to that. I don't know how it's going to be allocated. But at some point in time, this state, this county, and the cities in this county has got to put their foot down and say enough is enough. People need to be held responsible for their activities, for their actions, and what they do. I mean, we're here to help the people that need help and want help. A lot of these people don't want any help. We all know that. This gentleman just told us that. The camp in Beard Brook, right after they got there and they started growing and growing and growing, what did they do? They organized. And now they have their own little council that's running the place, so to speak. And they have a so-called mayor of the homeless camp. So they're putting themselves back into the same type of situation that we all live in. They're trying to live in an organized fashion. And I mean, it's just, it's crazy. I don't know. I don't even know how we could handle it, how we could do it, but something's got to happen. Somebody has to address this thing with some common sense, and these people have to take responsibility for themselves at some point in time, if they can. Then if they can't, then we can address it with the mental health issues. But what you guys are going to do, I don't have a clue. You know, who knows? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. You already know you don't run this place. They control the air, they control the water, they control our taxes, they control everything. The state controls everything. When I was on the school board, we had mandates after mandates after mandates that we had no control over. The local control is gone. We're just kind of like figureheads now. We just kind of shuffle stuff, shuffle paper, basically. So, good luck, gentlemen, ladies.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. Councilmember Condit.
There is a homeless crisis, not only in our county but in the state. I don't think anybody denies that. to echo some of the concerns out in the audience. The 9th Street Bridge location is just plain irresponsible for a location to put our most vulnerable members of our society in a flood zone is absolutely irresponsible location. And it will flood. It did last year, and it will flood again. I don't care how temporary it is or not. I know it's only supposed to be there for 6 months, but it will flood. And for the county not to have at least 4 or 5 other locations to consider, I think that's just kicking the can down the road. And to rush into this 9th Street location is plain irresponsible, as I mentioned before. But we do have a homeless crisis in our state and in our county. And I would like to just ask one more question to the city manager. Is there any possibility that the county can dictate a location for us in our city?
Well, there's always a possibility. The locations, the number of locations that they control are pretty small, i.e. that they have the jurisdiction to do that. The only really 2 locations would be the old hospital site, where they actually own, and then the jail facility with their community health care. Those are the only 2 properties of any size or magnitude they actually own and have kind of the zoning coverage where they could attempt to dictate. But as this council has previously given me direction over their dead body, would we pursue, would allow those without a fight?
Sure.
So is it possible? Yes.
Now,
is
no,
it likely? No.
Okay. Now, no matter how hard we fight, would they still potentially win at either one of those sites?
At the end of the day, it would come down to the specifics of what exactly they're proposing, and primarily, just like any other land use decision, it would likely be a CEQA type of a challenge.
Sure.
That were the impacts of what they were proposing adequately analyzed.
Sure.
And that's just like in any development project, that's generally the weak link, and I would suspect in this case,
sure,
it would take them many years to justify any of those activities in a location that didn't have the support of the local agency.
Okay, sure. And, I do think we need to act with compassion and consideration for our vulnerable citizens in our society. But I honestly believe that there's just too many details being lost in the weeds on this. And I do think it was rushed. As I mentioned, I do think the current plan, as we've seen on where the county is putting the temporary site, is irresponsible. And I really just, I can't consider this knowing what I know. And with the questions that have been asked tonight, I really don't feel comfortable with the answers that have been given. So I will not support the measure.
Councilmember Klein?
I can't support this measure either. So, what comment I want to make is, I do agree with some of the comments that Borough Condit has said, and he stated, people need to be responsible for some of their actions and for some of the situations they're in. I drive up and down parts of the Central Valley here, and I see homeless encampments and people that are forced out by Caltrans. But just the waste, and I'm not saying human waste, just the waste and the garbage and everything else that they leave behind, they show no effort into keeping the area that they are staying in a clean and orderly way. They rely on somebody else to come behind them and clean everything up, and that just drains more and more resources. It's one of those things, you don't mind helping somebody that wants to help themselves, but if they would, show some compassion themselves and keep their self clean and orderly, then why wouldn't we try to assist them to get out of their situation? So, it's difficult for me to support this, not knowing the direction that the county's going to go with the funding, and, no specifics of where it's going to be spent, other than what the state says you can do it, you can spend it in these pots. But I did not see any outline of how they are going to accomplish with the funding. So.
Okay, I'll go ahead and chime in. Obviously, as the mayor of the city, I've been involved in a number of discussions probably over the years or so. To answer your questions or comments, Councilmember Condit, there's been a lot of discussions about locations. I think at one point 3 of the 4 locations that the city of Modesto was considering were all in the city of Ceres, which I was not very supportive of. I don't believe moving Modesto's homeless problem to Ceres just because they believe that the services are here on county property is something that we should support. I think the county is struggling, or excuse me, well, both the city and the county are struggling. And there are a number of locations they're looking at. I think there's actually multiple locations they're looking at. The issue that I have with this, obviously I have compassion to try to help the homeless, at least those people that want to help themselves. The reason that the Beard site has been, the Beard Brook Park has been so wildly successful is because there's no rules. You can go there with your girlfriend, your wife, or whoever you want, smoke dope, bring your pets, and have a free-for-all. There's face painting, there's governmental rule, there's no rules, basically. And we're seeing, at least what I'm being told, that the shelters that we do have that want to help people have rules, and they don't want to go there. So they're not going there, and they're not checking into those. So it's a big issue that the city of Modesto is dealing with. And as this council has identified, there's no parameters in what the state is proposing here. And so I can't feel comfortable signing up for something that says I'm willing to move forward with helping, but I don't know what the rules are. But if I want the money, I have to opt in. And let's face it, $7.2 million in Stanislaus County, that's a drop in the bucket for what we would need. If you have to build a shelter, you're going to be spending a lot of money doing that. And I had a conversation with Beard Industrial, and they spent over $100,000 just cleaning up the property across from River Oaks. And that's picking up hypodermic needles, human waste, and how do they deal with that not infiltrating back in there, because it becomes a liability for them as the property owners. So anyway, I'll probably stop there and just say that I can't support this given the significant unknowns associated with it. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments or what the direction was, if anyone wanted to make a motion or not.
I'll make a motion. Staff recommends that we do not adopt this resolution declaring a homeless shelter crisis at this time.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Nay. No, I do not support the measure.
Council and agency member DeRosa,
No.
Council and agency member Klein.
Wait a minute.
I thought.
Wait,
that
you guys are losing me here, because I thought the motion was not to support,
Not to support. Right.
not to support it,
yeah.
and they're
Forgive me.
voting no
Yeah.
on something
I'm
not to
sorry.
support.
I was following you.
I do not support. No.
So I'm
Sorry,
going,
forgive
so
me,
they
my
should be
first
voting,
meeting.
they should be voting yes. Am I correct?
If they don't.
Yes.
If they don't support it, and the motion was not to support it, so they should be voting yes on the motion.
There's a double negative there.
Yeah, I know I know.
Are you the vote police?
I know, but I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. He just said he doesn't want to support it, and then he votes no. And I'm trying to figure
I was
this out.
confused by the motion, so forgive me.
No. Councilmember DeRosa did the same thing.
following you.
So I'm going, can you please, if I may ask, if it's okay with this body, can you please read the motion back and start the vote again?
Yes. So the motion was not to support the city of Ceres declaring a shelter crisis.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion to not support the shelter declaration passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, moving to discussion item. We have one item, the Whitmore Mansion discussion. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. As the mayor and the council recalls, the Whitmore Mansion was purchased by the city on January 14th of 2013. There were no general fund monies expended to make that purchase. It was using public facilities fees. So for the past 6 years, the facility has been operated under an agreement with the Whitmore Foundation. That foundation is a 501c3, and it operates the mansion under the criteria that was identified in the original agreement. Once that agreement was executed, it has been amended 3 times. The execution runs out or ends at the end of January of 2019. So this evening, the staff is seeking council direction on what you would like us to do in terms of the next term of the agreement, or provide direction in another manner. And I will also introduce Lisa Montero Moore, who is the head of the foundation, and she will give us some comments on thoughts that her and I have talked about over the course of the past year, and where she is looking for some direction from council.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I wish I had worn a larger jacket. I feel like we can hang meat in here, so it's a nice way to keep the audience jumping when it's colder than here. So thank you for the opportunity to present to the council again this evening. It dates myself to think that we originally had this conversation in 2013, and Toby and I chuckle about that it's been a process. Thank you for the opportunity to represent the community, the historical part of Ceres, the opportunity we've done with the Centennial and other things to recognize our fine city with the Whitmore Mansion project. We have utilized the facility in the way it was kind of intended in the 2013 era, with weddings and large function activities in the community. We have, the Whitmore Mansion Foundation and the volunteers associated with it, have taken a bit of a burden off the city with respect to event planning and activities at the mansion that were out of the ordinary. The city certainly did not have the funds to dedicate towards that type of recreation area. When I say funds, I'm talking staff funds, staff activity. The funds the city has expended have been to help preserve the facility and the grounds, but at a minimal amount each year. We have appreciated the work of the Public Works Department under Jeremy's direction. They've been incredibly helpful and take care of the facility as though it's their own home. We really appreciate that. We have maintained a number of events during the year, but the city and our Mansion Foundation volunteers in the community have met a number of times, particularly in the last 2 years, I would say, to evaluate the types and uses of activities at the mansion to see what's best for the community's best interest. We have hoped in the 2013, 2014, 2015 conversations that we would have had maybe some more strategic planning involved with the city, or other opportunities that were promised prior to the mansion's foundation's running of the facility, to see what can be utilized in the 5th and 6th Street parts of the community. And because of our city's low financial status and an inability to expend any additional funds outside of what was just by the $8,000 a year in the mansion's power bill and water and those type of upkeeps, we have been able to manage a facility that's been given the chance to be a gym for the city of Ceres. We've been able to host events there, do different types of things, but pretty much with little or no city assistance as far as direct fundraising. There's no outreach. There's not a dollar amount for outreach. We're not utilizing city funds or staffing to manage events there. We were very pleased this year with the efforts we've had. In the past 5 years, we've improved the air conditioning, made repairs to the place, and this year we were able to secure funding for a repaint job, for, as I call it, a facelift for the old girl over there, to improve the opportunity to have the mansion as a centennial focal point for us in this 100-year celebration of Ceres. So I've been very fortunate to be part of these activities, and certainly appreciate the council's ability to let us do so. And going forward, now that the city's having a little bit more of more fluctuation in the financial department, and we're not just trying to keep the doors open here at City Hall, but and trying to be sensitive to what our financial costs are in the future. We're looking at what else we can do at the mansion, what's available, what our options are, and wanted to be able to present a plan back to the city that would be useful. Whether that be the mansion continue to be run by the foundation in its long-term use, or other types of opportunities. We have been working with the city to evaluate what our opportunities could be, but have not been able to really delve into that due to some city limitations at the time with staffing. But would like the opportunity within the next several months to come back with a plan to the council to say, hey, here's some ideas we think we can utilize with the facility that would be in the best interests of the local area around the mansion, but as well as the community as a whole. We've appreciated the opportunity to be able to manage events and activities there. We'd like to continue doing so, but also looking to see what latitude we have as far as other types of activities. Nothing crazy here, but other ways to promote it, other events, and things that would be useful to our community. Now that we've been doing this for 5 years, we have a better idea of what we can and can't do, what works, maybe doesn't work as well, and what maybe compromises the integrity of downtown. But now that our downtown is a little more vibrant, how we can be better at utilizing that. Because we were actually a part of the downtown revitalization when it wasn't being revitalized. So now we're here at a different day than we were 5 years ago. When I'm like, hey, let's see if this will work. We kind of know what works, but we also have to look at what we can do to sustain it on long term, but to be able to continue to keep this jewel of Ceres in downtown. We don't really have a lot of historic significance, long-term locations in our community. Some communities have more than others, and some are able to use dual uses for those types of facilities. So that's what we're looking to do for the mansion, to see, explore what opportunities we have in the future.
So if we were to extend it for a year, do you think, I mean, first of all, I think you have done a very admirable job, and it's very difficult, I'm sure. But if we were extended another year, would that give you the time, you think, to meet with staff and discuss some options, or?
I think it would give us adequate time. Our committee members have met with different community leaders, and some, our goal is for the facility not to leave the community's grasp, per se. We don't really want to sell it off or try to do something crazy that we would then, as a community series, you know, the part of the series that I enjoy so much, would lose the integrity and control of the facility. So we were hoping that within several months we could actually initiate some of these conversations with city staff to kind of flesh out some ideas, but we certainly didn't think it was within our purview to initiate those kind of conversations before we had the blessing of the council. I think that would be short-sighted.
Okay. Vice Mayor Rhino?
According to the staff report, the stated goal of the agreement is for the foundation to acquire the building. Is that now no longer a possibility?
That would be a very nice option, but we certainly don't want to overassume what the council's desires were. If the foundation could acquire the facility in a leasing type capacity for a long-term use in some way that is legally appropriate, a public-private partnership of some sort would certainly be a goal. But I would like to be able to have some direction from the council and are going forward at the future with staff review that matches what the city plans are for downtown.
Well, I guess I'm confused, because when I read acquire, I always was under the impression that the foundation was going to buy it, is what I had always assumed.
If I find somebody who will give the foundation a large influx of cash to be able to support the purchase, but it depends on what the purchase price is. It is a purchase it for appraised value, or purchase it for $1. I don't know what's in between there. I don't have that kind of cash in our foundation.
Okay, so acquire now means possibly leasing the facility from the city.
It's yet to be determined. We'd like to be able to have some time to flesh out what our opportunities are. If we were able to find someone, a backer that would support the foundation's acquiring it, whatever means the city said going forward, trying to come up with a plan to sustain the facility so that we can acquire it for its use, whether it be partnership or some other type of arrangement.
Also, for clarification real quickly, the acquisition and acquire, recognize when we purchased the property, it includes more than just the mansion property as well. So there's adjacent property to the south that has plans for a park, as well as a well site, as well as a small piece of vacant property on the north side. So the acquisition as it was intended originally was for the actual mansion property, which is less than what the city actually owns. And that, again, was an agreement executed in 2013 under pretty different circumstances, but that was the language in the original agreement. And obviously, as we've spent time operating and seeing how the revenues and expenditures have ebbed and flowed over the course of the past 6 years, you know, the likelihood that there is enough margin, so to speak, to pay full fair market value is significantly challenged, and we didn't know that until we've operated it for a few years to see where those revenues and expenses are. But the agreement is still intact, and that's
okay.
What we're asking for.
The public facility fees that were used to purchase the property?
So there's two aspects of the public facilities fees that were used. Parks was a portion, and then the community facilities. So there are two components that were used to make the purchase.
And where did the money come that went into those two funds?
Developer fees.
developer fees, which most people, I would assume, thought that that would provide for parks in the new subdivisions that they were buying.
Well, again, because of the land was delineated south of the mansion as a park, that was the nexus, the connectivity for building a park on that portion. So that's the portion of the acquisition that was using the park fees, was the vacant land to the south of the mansion.
Okay, so
Community
I think
facilities
it's called
fee.
River Ranch, where Lions Park is supposed to go. Is that called River Ranch?
One of the subdivisions had a name similar to that. I think that was one of the names.
So that developer paid into
Park development fees.
park development fees,
Correct.
but we've never had the money to develop Lions Park.
We actually do have the money, and
Now we do.
That is actually under design and is budgeted in the capital improvement budget to be constructed this year.
And that would be the same as for the Eastgate Park?
Correct. Both of those parks are under design currently.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. At this time, I will open it up to the public, see if anyone wants to comment on this item. Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. What's the will? So if I'm hearing you, Lisa, you'd like the ability to have some time to be able to come back to the council with some options as to some things that might work. Is that what I'm hearing, or?
Correct, with some limited use going on in between there, as we try to explore, we have some ideas. We're just trying to see if they'll flesh out.
Okay.
For a variety of ideas, but we of course didn't want to go forward without council approval, so.
I mean, I don't know that I can speak for everybody on this board, but I think we're pretty open to anything at this point. Obviously, that's an asset that we have that needs, ADA improvements, all sorts of things. So I think if we can come, or you can come up with working with us for something that is as close to a win-win for everybody, then I think I don't think there's anybody here that feels staunchly opposed to doing anything with that building.
Well, I would not support continuing the agreement.
So you would like the city to take it back at a cost of $12,000 a year to the general fund?
No. I think we need to seriously look at, and this won't make me popular, but I think we need to, if the foundation can't purchase it and run it, then maybe we need to look at possibly selling it.
Well, I think that's the discussion that we're talking about, and perhaps if they can afford something and the city carries the note on that and they make monthly payments or something, that would potentially be a sale.
I thought maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that Ms. Mantero Moore was talking about coming back with other ideas as far as what can be done to increase the revenue at the facility.
Both your comments are correct. Increasing the revenue and other options to support what that will entail. If I were to come back and speculate that we have some backers that want to do a type of program there, and that's what the costs are going to be, this is all part of that conversation. We need the time to be able, in this time where we're not responsible for we have the 3-year contract for doing events there, we need some time to have these folks that are coming out of the woodwork now that the downtown is being more revitalized and Ceres is in a little better position to offer back to the council, here's some options, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And it may include all of the above items of here's what we think we can do, here's what the city should do, here's what you might want to do. And then you could say here, yes or no, or maybe. So whether it be the original plan, or the original agreement was actually that entire purchase of the land. The foundation is not responsible for anything outside our little fence per se, because now the well is over there at the park site. So any different way it could be acquired, be it a revenue enhancement, but also pay the bills. And it's hard for me to speculate sitting here with my foundation bank account that's very small without having the support of the other folks who might be businesses and so on, business owners who want to make something different of this. Some suggestions they have that will maybe be something that's serious. Oh, this is like something we could try. So I'd like to be able to come back with those opportunities that we that our committee is discussing with city staff's involvement of what our parameters are that we can showcase.
I guess from my perspective, I think we owe it to them to at least come back to us with an option. If it's something that we don't want to do, then we could always sell the facility outright and see what we can get from it. But again, keep in mind, there's a few $100,000 worth of improvements that need to be done to bring it into compliance with certain things. And so we've been fortunate that they've been able to not impact us to the general fund in supporting it. So, and I don't even know if we have an appraisal on the building, so we don't even know what its value is at this point.
So are you talking another year or 6
Well,
months?
I'm saying, I mean, if you want to make it 6 months, I don't care. I think if I would say up to a year, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take.
I'm not going to come here I'm not going to wait a year from now to say, hey, here's our idea. That's not in my best interest or that of the people I'm working with. I would like a year to develop a plan with city staff time constraints and the community members to come back with a plan that works. If we come back, as we normally do with Toby, on a quarterly basis to say, here's what your options are, if it's not flying with the council, we're not going to continue chasing the wrong dog. So it's a matter of we need just some time to develop some opportunities for people who might have an interest in some unique activity now that our makeup's changed a little bit than it was 5 years ago.
Councilmember Klein?
You know, I've attended a couple of things that have been at the Whitmore Mansion, and I got to say that, you know, the foundation's got to be commended by working with staff of keeping the facility very, you know, presentable. You know, they've done an excellent job. You know, what I'd like to see is to extend this contract 1 year with the foundation coming back before the city, either the city manager or the city council, with at least some sort of outline of what they feel is feasible for them to either lease the property long term or lease to purchase. And you know, I would like to say that with extending this 1 year, that I'd ask the foundation to come back within 6 months. You know, to work with the city manager of this body of what they're capable of doing or what they look to proceed to do. And with extending it 1 year, you know, weddings and everything do take place, you know, starting in March. And I hate just to say, well, come June in 6 months, you're cut off when they've got things planned. So I would recommend that, you know, the foundation work with the city within 6 months with an outline.
Would you be willing to sit on a subcommittee of 2 council members that works with the city manager and the foundation? I think it's that was a great idea you had.
Wait a minute. Since I said that comment, okay, and I will say yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you think is beneficial, but
You actually took the words right out of my mouth. This is exactly what I was thinking is the way we've done the agreements and the extension have been quarterly updates, April, July, October, January. So under the premise that Councilmember Klein just indicated, you know, our next quarterly update would be scheduled for April. So what I would suggest, if the council is more inclined, would be to bring the agreement in January for council approval, extending it with a year with those same dates. And what we would add is provision in there for the formation of a subcommittee of 2 council members to be able to work with staff and the foundation to come up and create that outline so that when it does come back, it has some input from council. In April, you know, my idea would use that same quarterly thing, an April meeting, a July meeting, and by that July timeframe, hopefully have some pretty clear direction where we're headed. So by the time you get to October, the decision is made.
Okay.
But now, you know, I do want it to be known that I would like to see the city either lease it to them long term or sell it to them, or the city get rid of it. Because I don't believe the city should own the Daniel Whitmore house like they own the Clinton Whitmore house. Okay? I think we already have our house that is, you know, the heritage of the city.
So I think that we need to look at one way of not disposing like tearing it down,
Well, if you're
but
on the disposing, then I don't know if I want you on the committee, but go ahead.
yeah, but the thing of it is, I'm going to be very open-minded because, like I say, I wanted the foundation, to be able to either lease it or buy it and take responsibility for everything as far as the maintenance and the utilities and everything like that. So that's the direction I'd like to see. And if you want to vote me off the island, you got one vote.
All right, so I think the city manager has outlined a process at this point, and I've already opened up for the public. Does anyone want to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion to give a year span. I'll sit on the committee with you, Councilmember Klein. Okay? I'll outlast you on the island.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have a motion and a second? Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Council and agency members Condit,
Aye.
Durosset,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhino,
Yes.
and Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we'll move to council member referrals. Is there anyone on the council that would like to have an item placed on a future agenda?
I have a couple items I'd like to see about having on an agenda, and I'm not sure if it should be a council agenda or the goal-setting workshop that we may be having in a few months. But I would like to discuss having an adopt a park or an adopt a certain area of Ceres that we can get citizens involved in and maybe start cleaning up little sections ourselves rather than wait for the yearly Love Series and whether or not it happens. And I'm not sure what it would be called, adopt a something, but I don't know if we could have that on an agenda or if the goal-setting workshop would be a better place.
Can you put that, probably the goal setting would be?
Yeah, that was tentative plan for February, was the outline that we were looking for. That would seem like it would be appropriate conversation piece as part of that overall plan for the year of how it ties in with budget. So that would seem like a pretty appropriate location for it.
And the other item I'd like to have for discussion is bringing Christmas down to the downtown area again, now that we have it nicely renovated or it's on its way. Many years ago, when I was part of the planning department and we had Ceres Downtown Revitalization Board as one of our duties, we actually held an event a couple times in the downtown area where we had Santa and we had a Christmas tree and we had cookies, and we had such a big turnout that I think we need to try and get people to the downtown area. And I don't know if that's another, can we have that at the goal-setting workshop as well?
We can. I would think, I would like to task Tom and our new recreation manager, Matt, to come up with some ideas. I think it would be probably a better approach for us to bring you some suggestions and act on those, whether it's the goal setting or sometime after that. Likely staff will be, what they do every year after the Christmas tree festival, is kind of revisiting that, reviewing that, how that went, and look for corrections in the future, and how to supplement that. I think we saw some good success with our Halloween festival this year, moving that to downtown. I think that's a natural progression of moving that to Christmas Tree Lane. So down to downtown as part of Christmas. So I don't know if we necessarily need a discussion item for that. I hear that.
I think what I'd like to see it is I would like to see that also at that February, if we want to call it goal setting or whatever, and I'd like to have a discussion overall of all of the events that we have annually and say, what do we as a city want to do? And if that means we want to add a second Christmas event, because I don't think we want to mess with Christmas Tree Lane and all that, because I think that's pretty popular right now.
Right, but back a long time ago, it wasn't a very staff, it didn't require a lot of staff time to put on this event. And it seems like during the small town Saturday or small business Saturday, that would be the perfect time.
Sure.
And didn't we put electricity to all of the trees downtown?
Yes.
So it would conceivably, we could do the whole little white twinkling lights and.
Of course.
Okay.
We already have those up there. Sorry.
We have twinkling light.
Yeah, it says series. Okay, is there anyone else? All right, Ms. Dean? Nubia?
Oh, wait. Was that the agenda, or are you asking for the reports? Because I have a report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We had referrals.
I jumped over the
Yes, you
reports.
did.
I have nothing to report.
I have nothing to report.
I would like to announce that beginning the first Tuesday of the month, I'm going to start having a monthly office hours. And I'll have it in the council office, which is just south of, trying to think of where I am, south of this, it's connected to this building, but we have our own entry door. And since January 1st the city is closed, I will still be there. And the first Tuesday of every month from 4 to 6 p.m. if anyone wants to come
For your district, right?
No, for anyone that wants to come and talk to me.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be just district, but as a council member, I mean, I have a district, but I still represent everybody.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay, now, Steen?
Still nothing.
Okay. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. One item to remind the council, tomorrow evening in this room at 6:30, the county is hosting a discussion, an overview of the Faith Home Expressway. The concept is looking at the extension of Faith Home and a bridge over the Tuolumne River to connect to the Beard industrial area. That plan has been ongoing for some time. We're presenting an update on the environmental status of that project, and city staff will be there as well. So that's tomorrow evening in this room. Wanted to take an opportunity to thank Bettina and Shay from LCW and their work on the negotiations. The activity this evening approving the MOU with the firefighters completes all of our negotiations. So it's been a long process. So very pleased to have that under our belts and have agreements in place with all of our bargaining units for 2 years for PD and 3 years for the rest of the group. So that is a major accomplishment, and now Bettina can focus on some other work that she's not been able to get to because of the length of the negotiation process. So, and lastly, since as part of this agenda, we will not be having another meeting until after the first of the year. Just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Wells, for the record, that we were not the lead agency on the bridge crossing.
The county is the lead agency on that.
Correct.
Endeavor.
Because I
Correct.
don't want our residents thinking we're
No.
telling them, but we're
Yeah.
not
The county-
supportive of that, and we're running out as the lead agency.
Yeah,
So
no, the county.
just for clarification, it's
Right.
Stanislaus County.
And the county's efforts on Faith Home, it is in their regional plan, is in the regional transportation plan, and it is a planning document so they can start pursuing funds for the overall construction.
Gotcha. Hopefully not ahead of our Mitchell interchange. Mr. Westbrook?
Nothing, sir.
Jeremy? Mr. Collins? Rich?
Just briefly, just want to let everybody know that our committee members for our fire apparatus replacement program returned December 1st from their week-long trip to Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota for the pre-construction meetings with the manufacturer. Spent almost every day, all day, in sub-zero temperatures, mostly outdoors, looking at different types of fire engines and the options and specifications. They came back and said the weather here is beautiful. So their next trip is going to be in about 5 months from now, which is about midway through the process, and they're still on a good timeline to be just under a year to have the fleet replacement arrive. So everything is going according to schedule.
Great. Steve? Bettina? I think I have everybody there. Okay. With that, we will be moving to closed session conference with real property negotiator. And then after that, we will adjourn to our, January 14th meeting because our December 26th meeting is canceled. So thank you.
I've got a couple of questions for you.